The air inside the Denver District Court felt frozen, too quiet, too heavy. Across from me sat my stepbrother, Caleb Whitaker, 28 years old, hands folded like a choir boy, wearing that familiar smug grin he used to get out of every mess. He thought today would be no different, just another family altercation he could charm his way through. But then Judge Harrison Cole, a gray-haired veteran of 30 years in the justice system, looked up from the thick sealed folder in front of him. The room shifted. His voice was low, deliberate. Mr. Whitaker, this report from the Department of Homeland Security tells a very different story. It appears your stepsister isn't just a temp worker at an office. He cleared his throat, eyes narrowing. Miss Eleanor Brooks, age 32, senior cyber threat specialist, level 5 federal clearance. At 0211 hours, she activated an emergency protocol reserved for domestic terrorism threats. Caleb's smirk fell apart like glass. For the first time in his life, he had no words. 2 months ago, at 2 a.m., the only sound in my stepfather's mountain house was their laughter. Caleb, drunk again, furious over a broken phone charger, cornered me in the kitchen. My mother, Lydia, sat in the living room with my stepfather, Martin, sipping wine like they were watching late-night comedy. I tried to diffuse it. Calm voice, open hands. But then came the sentence that broke something in me. "Oh, let him be, Ellie. You always make things so dramatic." The same voice that once dismissed my graduation, my promotions, my life. Then, he lunged, a flash of metal, a box cutter from the tool drawer. Pain ripped through my left arm, sharp, burning, real. Blood soaked my sleeve. Their laughter stopped, but no one moved. Now, in this courtroom, with the truth laid bare, and the world finally seeing who I am, not who they said I was, I sat straighter. This was no longer a family argument. This was accountability, chuckling. I couldn't tell if my body was shaking from blood loss or shock, but my mind, strangely, was calm, like the eye of a storm. My hand slipped into my pocket. Fingers trembling, I unlocked my phone and typed 3 letters to an encrypted number no one in that house even knew existed. SOS. Not save me, not a plea to a friend. It was a protocol, an activation reserved for federal personnel under imminent threat. 90 seconds later, my vision blurred, knees buckled, and I hit the kitchen floor. They thought I had texted a friend for comfort. They didn't know I had just triggered Federal Duress Channel Protocol 7B, the same system used to protect diplomats overseas. If they had known, maybe they wouldn't have laughed. To understand why the courtroom now sat frozen in silence, you have to understand the life I lived before this, the life they never bothered to see. To my family, I was Eleanor, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble, the one who blended into the wallpaper so Caleb could shine. I remember one summer Sunday at their cabin in Estes Park, the grill smoking, beer cans clinking. Caleb was boasting about becoming assistant regional sales manager at a car dealership. My stepfather, Martin, clapped him on the back like he'd won a Pulitzer. The family applauded. Later, I quietly mentioned that I had completed a high-level cybersecurity certification, a course with a 9% pass rate. Martin didn't even look at me, just gave me a distracted, "That's nice, Ellie. Stick with your little government job. It's safe." Safe. That word tasted like ash. To them, I worked in a cubicle stamping forms. They never knew that government IT meant decrypting intercepted communication tied to terrorist networks, or that my clearance could unlock things they couldn't even imagine existed. My mother Lydia once told me, "Caleb needs us, Eleanor. Don't complicate things with your big ideas," so I stopped sharing. But silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes silence is just waiting. I let them believe I was just another government clerk pushing paper in some dull federal building. It was easier than trying to explain the truth, that my world was anything but safe or ordinary. While they toasted Caleb's promotion at the car dealership, I was spending 12-hour shifts in a windowless sub-level bunker beneath a federal facility in Colorado Springs. A SCIF, sensitive compartmented information facility. No windows, no phones, no mistakes. In there, you can hear your own heartbeat louder than your thoughts. I wasn't just an analyst. I was the lead cyber threat specialist for the Western Intelligence Division. 3 days before that barbecue, I was standing in a secure briefing room in front of Deputy Director Samuel Reeves, a man whose stare could make seasoned generals fall silent. My report was in my hand. My voice didn't shake. Satellite relays are showing abnormal data spikes. Encrypted chatter has increased by 41%. This node, I pointed to a blinking mark on the digital map, matches pre-attack reconnaissance patterns. I paused, then said the thing that would change everything. I recommend elevating to threat level Delta. Probability of hostile action within 48 hours, 91.7%. Not a gasp, not a pat on the head, just silence, until Director Reeves gave one sharp nod. Approved. Execute immediately. Your instinct hasn't failed us yet. In that room, my words could move armed convoys and evacuate embassies. But at home, I was just Ellie with the stable little job. In one universe, I was trusted with lives. In the other, I was invisible. The whiplash between the two realities became a constant ache I never spoke about. At work, I handled threats against diplomats. At home, my mother told me to stop overreacting and let Caleb calm down. They saw me as quiet. They never realized quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means I'm calculating, I'm watching, I'm waiting. And soon, the world they ignored would collide, violently, with the one they never believed existed. For most of my life, I tried to earn their respect. But when I woke up in a hospital bed, shoulder stitched, arm bandaged, and the echo of their laughter still lingering in my skull, I finally understood. I had been following their rules. It was time to follow mine. I woke to the sterile scent of disinfectant and my mother's soft, practiced voice. She sat beside my bed, hands folded in her lap like a grieving saint. My stepfather, Martin, stood behind her, arms crossed, rehearsed concern on his face. "Oh, thank God you're awake," my mother, Lydia, whispered. "You must have slipped and fallen onto the toolbox. Caleb feels awful about it." The memory of the box cutter entering my shoulder was sharp and vivid. Their laughter, the blood, the way no one stepped forward to help. And now, this lie. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to rewrite history. For the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't beg to be believed. I felt nothing. I nodded slowly and said nothing. When they left to grab clean clothes and your favorite tea, I reached for my phone, not to call the police, to call someone with jurisdiction over them. "This is analyst Eleanor Brooks," I said clearly, "reporting an assault on a federal employee and activation of duress protocol 7 Bravo." This wasn't family anymore. This was federal. The next morning, she arrived. Attorney Marissa Hale from the agency's Office of Legal Counsel. Slate gray suit. No smile. No pity. "Your SOS wasn't just a message," she said. "It activated a federal alert. GPS tracking, duress confirmation, and a sealed time-stamped incident report. That's what got emergency medics to you before you bled out." That report was now evidence. A weapon they couldn't charm, shame, or lie their way around. While I healed in silence, my family hired a cheap local attorney, the kind who advertises between divorce firm commercials and used car dealerships. They thought this was going to be a dramatic family dispute. They had no idea they were walking into federal court. If this story left a mark on you, don't forget to subscribe, because the next chapter isn't just about revenge or justice. It's about what happens when the truth finally walks into the courtroom. They thought my silence made me weak. They mistook composure for fragility, privacy for paranoia. While they rehearsed emotional speeches and collected stories about my dramatic outbursts, Attorney Marissa Hale and I were collecting federal evidence, time-stamped 911 call recordings, paramedic intake reports, and the duress activation file automatically logged by the Department of Homeland Security. They were preparing gossip. We were preparing government documents. To them, this was a family dispute. To the United States government, it was an assault on a federal officer during an active security protocol. The courtroom in Denver District Court was as bland as ever. Ivory walls, scuffed wooden benches, buzzing fluorescent lights. I sat beside Marissa, spine straight, hands folded neatly. Across the aisle, my family sat with smug certainty. Caleb leaned toward their attorney, whispering, confident. My mother, Lydia, and stepfather, Martin, sat behind him, wearing the same self-righteous expression they always did when they believed they were morally superior. Their lawyer, cheap suit, louder ego, stood first. He introduced me as an unstable, overly sensitive young woman with a history of exaggeration and emotional volatility. He described my quiet nature as withdrawn and possibly paranoid. He painted my ambition as attention-seeking. He was describing a stranger, a ghost. And I didn't interrupt. Because ghosts don't argue, they haunt. When he finally sat down, Marissa rose. No theatrics, no raised voice, just calm precision. Your Honor, she said clearly, the petitioner submits for the record a certified copy of Diplomatic Security Service Incident Report 77B. A thick binder slid onto the evidence table with a quiet thud. Their lawyer jerked to his feet. Objection. Irrelevant. This is a family issue, not a federal matter. Marissa didn't even look at him. Your Honor, she continued, this report includes the federally logged duress signal, GPS coordinates of the assault, medical photographs, and statements from federal responders. Under Title 18, this is no longer a family disagreement. It is a matter of federal jurisdiction. The room went silent. Even Caleb stopped smiling. Judge Harrison Cole, a man who had likely heard every variety of family dispute in his 30-year career, leaned forward as attorney Marissa Hale placed the sealed federal document on his bench. He traced a finger over the embossed Department of State seal, his brow creasing. This is highly irregular, he murmured. Then, glancing toward my family's lawyer, he added, but admissible. Objection overruled. A ripple of silence spread through the courtroom. He broke the seal. As he read, I kept my eyes locked on him. At first, his expression remained steady, professional, detached. But then I saw it, the subtle tightening of his jaw. His eyebrows lifted. The bored courtroom atmosphere dissolved like smoke. Across the aisle, I heard my stepmother, Lydia, whisper, "What is that?" Caleb shifted in his seat. His smirk was gone. They had prepared for a shouting match. They had expected drama. They were not prepared for a federal report with satellite timestamps and chain of evidence signatures. After several tense moments, the judge removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose as if clearing his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice carried a cold authority. At 0211 hours, a Level 5 duress protocol was activated by Senior Cyber Threat Analyst Eleanor Brooks of the Western Intelligence Division. A gasp escaped my mother's lips. Senior Analyst, two words that had never existed in their version of me. The judge continued, each sentence striking harder than the last. Responding federal wellness team and paramedics documented a puncture wound to the left shoulder, consistent with a box cutter. Subject was found semi-conscious with significant blood loss. GPS coordinates confirm the distress signal originated from the defendant's residence. He looked at Caleb, not as a troubled young man, not as a son, but as a defendant. This document, the judge said firmly, includes verified timestamps, a full transcript of the 911 call made by federal responders, and a sworn declaration from Ms. Brooks's superior at the Department of State. It contradicts the defense's testimony in its entirety. The room went silent. Caleb's face drained to white. And for the first time, my parents had nothing to say. My stepbrother Caleb looked at me, then at the judge, like he was trying to solve an equation that suddenly had answers he didn't like. But it was my mother, Lydia, whose face I will never forget. The pride she wore like armor shattered into something raw and unfamiliar: fear. The words senior analyst and duress protocol had cracked her perfect world in half. For the first time, she wasn't looking at her dramatic, overly sensitive daughter. She was looking at a stranger, and a stranger with power. Judge Harrison Cole's voice sliced through the silence. Based on this verified federal documentation, I am granting a permanent restraining order against the defendant. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for felony assault charges. It was done. Irreversible. Two bailiffs moved toward Caleb. His face was paper white, his hands trembling. The boy my stepfather always called a natural winner was now just another defendant being escorted away. The spell broke. "Eleanor, wait! We need to talk!" My mother's voice cracked as she rushed forward, Martin following behind her. But attorney Marissa Hale stepped between us, one hand raised. "That's close enough." Her tone was calm. Final. They froze. Blocked not by force, but by authority they couldn't argue with. I didn't turn around. I didn't offer comfort or forgiveness. For years, I begged them to see me. Now they finally did, and I no longer needed them to. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and walked out of the courtroom. Outside, leaning against the hallway wall, were two people who actually knew me: Deputy Director Samuel Reeves and my colleague Agent Mara Chen. No pity, no dramatics. Reeves gave a single, firm nod. "Glad you're all right, Brooks. We'll take it from here." In my world, that was the highest form of care, not hugs, but action. 1 year later, the memory of that courtroom felt distant. I stood before a glass-walled briefing room in D.C. On the door, a small plaque read, "Eleanor Brooks, Team Lead, Clandestine Threat Analysis Division." I hadn't just survived, I had stepped into who I was always meant to be. I now led the Clandestine Threat Analysis Unit, a subdivision of the Western Intelligence Division, the same place where I once sat in the shadows. No longer the silent analyst in the back row, I was the one speaking at the head of the glass-walled briefing room in Washington, D.C. My voice was steady, confident, as I walked my team through a new surveillance protocol I'd personally designed. A thin silver scar curved over my left shoulder, just visible above my collar. Not a wound, a reminder. A reminder of the night I stopped trying to be understood and started enforcing my own rules. After the briefing, no one rushed out. Instead, my team gathered around the central operations table, poring over satellite feeds, asking precise questions, testing my logic, countering my suggestions. No egos, no condescension, only sharp minds and mutual respect. We debated, we challenged each other, and then, like always, we laughed. A kind of humor born from people who analyze worst-case scenarios for a living. This wasn't the family I was born into, this was the family I earned. They didn't tolerate my ambition, they depended on it. Late one night, as DC rain tapped softly against the office windows, a notification appeared on my personal tablet. Subject: from your mother. For a moment, I just stared. Then I opened it. Paragraphs of excuses. Claims that Caleb's life was destroyed over one mistake, that he was a good boy led astray by stress, that they were hurt too. She wrote as if my trauma was something that happened to her. And at the end, "Do you think one day you could forgive us? 10 years ago, this would have shattered me. 5 years ago, it would have ignited fury. Now, I felt nothing. It was just data." I hovered the cursor, then calmly dragged the email into a folder labeled Archived. Not deleted, not answered. Just filed away like irrelevant intelligence. I turned back to the glowing world map on my secure monitor. Red indicators pulsing across borders and coastlines. The past was a closed case. The future was my assignment. My family once treated me like a footnote in their story. Now, I protect the people who write history. And the day they finally understood that, they had nothing left to say. There was a time I begged to be seen. Now I stand where I no longer need their validation. If my story stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me what part hit you the hardest. And if you stand with me, hit subscribe so this voice is never silenced again. Remember this: your worth isn't measured by who claps for you, but by who stands beside you when the truth finally comes out. Protect your peace, set your boundaries, and never apologize for choosing yourself.